I'm Evelyn Reed, 34, a financial analyst in Minneapolis, Minnesota. For years, my income has been the unofficial fund to keep my family solvent. A loan for my dad's failing business, seed money for my sister's endless startups, a new sump pump after a brutal winter thaw flooded the basement. I even passed on a direct promotion to a New York office, a clear path to partner just to remain their safety net. It was 11:51 p.m. when my phone lit up with my father's name. I didn't get a hello. Just his voice heavy with a decision already made. Evelyn, your mother and I have been talking. We're signing the house over to Chloe. Her new venture needs real collateral, and we believe in her vision. I didn't speak. The silence on the line was a vacuum sucking the air from my lungs. My mother's voice joined his thin and reedy. She has so much potential, honey. This is her chance. Potential. The word they used for my sister's whims paid for by my reality. I stared at the wall of my Minneapolis apartment, a place I could barely furnish because I was too busy maintaining theirs. They weren't asking. They were informing me of a transaction they'd already completed in their minds. A final hostile takeover of everything I'd worked to protect. Anger wasn't loud this time. It was clinical. A switch flipped. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just said I understand, my voice unnervingly calm. Then I hung up. My fingers didn't shake as I opened my laptop. This wasn't a moment for emotion. This was an audit. A final, necessary reconciliation of a portfolio that had been mismanaged for over a decade. The clock on my screen read 11:53 p.m. First, the $2,500 monthly wire transfer I'd set up 8 years ago to cover their mortgage. I found the transaction. I clicked the button. Asterisk cancel recurring payment. Asterisk. A small, sterile pop-up asked for confirmation. Asterisk confirm. Asterisk. Next, the family mobile plan. 5 lines all under my name, all paid from my account. I logged into the provider's portal. Asterisk terminate service agreement. Asterisk. The system warned of early termination fees. I clicked times accept asterisk. Then came the insurance policies, home, auto, life, all of which I'd been paying the premiums on since my father's business first faltered. One by one, I logged in, navigated the menus, and severed the connection. Each click was precise, clean, and irreversible. This wasn't revenge, it was accounting. I was simply closing out a series of delinquent accounts that were draining my assets and yielding zero returns. The clock turned to 12:03 a.m. My inbox began to chime. A series of automated emails, one after the other. Asterisk, subject confirmation of your service cancellation. Asterisk, asterisk, subject your policy has been terminated. Asterisk, 12 minutes. In 12 minutes, I had dismantled the entire financial infrastructure that had kept them afloat for years. I closed the laptop. Inside, my apartment was silent, but I had never felt such profound clarity. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the screen fading, and the balance sheet of my sacrifices scrolled through my mind. It started 10 years ago. Dad's contracting business was on the verge of bankruptcy. He called me, his voice thick with shame, asking for $50,000 to make payroll and satisfy his creditors. I'd just received my first major bonus. I drained my savings account and wired him the money the next morning. He never called it a loan. He called it what family does, and it was never mentioned again. That became the precedent. 2 years later, my sister Chloe decided she was an entrepreneur. Her first venture was a boutique jewelry line. It required $10,000 for materials and a website. I paid for it. It failed within 6 months. Then came the organic dog treat bakery, which needed $15,000 for a commercial kitchen lease. I paid for that too. When it folded, she moved on to a life coaching brand that required $20,000 for certifications and marketing. I paid and I paid and I paid. Each failure was reframed as a learning experience, and each new vision was presented as the one that would finally take off a brilliant investment in her future. My future, meanwhile, was put on hold. The biggest line item was the New York promotion. Vice president. A corner office overlooking Manhattan. A salary that would have changed my life. I had the offer in my hand, but my mother called me weeping. She had a health scare, a minor one it turned out, and said she couldn't bear the thought of me being so far away. "We need you here, Evelyn," she'd pleaded. So I stayed. I stayed and kept the accounts balanced. I wasn't a daughter. I was a silent, essential investor in their lives, and tonight they had liquidated my entire stake without my consent. The first call came at 7:02 a.m. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Evelyn, call me immediately. The bank just called. The mortgage payment was rejected. There must be some mistake. The next came a minute later from my father. Our phones are shut off. I can only call on Wi-Fi. What is going on? Fix this. Then came the barrage of texts from Chloe, each one more frantic than the last. My business account is frozen. The insurance payment for my company car didn't clear. What did you do? Are you trying to ruin my life? You are a monster, Evelyn. Answer me. I read the messages, my expression unchanged. Their panic was just noise on a closed trading floor. It held no value. I blocked all 3 numbers. I spent the morning creating a spreadsheet detailing every dollar I had ever given them. It was a long list. By noon, the total was well over $200,000. I saved the file, naming it Family Audit Final. Their chaos was not my liability. It was a market correction. By the afternoon, the escalation moved from private panic to public shaming. Chloe, unable to reach me directly, took her campaign to social media. She posted a carefully selected decade-old photo of me with my parents, all of us smiling at a holiday dinner. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulative fiction. So heartbroken it began. After years of my parents sacrificing everything for her, my sister, Evelyn Reed, a successful analyst in Minneapolis, has decided to cut them off completely. She's leaving them to lose their home, all because they chose to believe in my dream. Please send prayers for my parents during this cruel and shocking betrayal. The post exploded. Comments poured in from distant relatives, old family friends, and complete strangers. That's horrible. How could she be so heartless? I always knew she was cold. The narrative was set. I was the cruel, wealthy villain, and they were my innocent victims. The professional escalation began the next morning. My boss, a senior partner named Mr. Harrison, called me into his glass-walled office. He looked uncomfortable. Evelyn, he said, gesturing for me to close the door. I got a call this morning from Jim Gable. You know, from Gable Industries. He's a friend of your father's. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Gable Industries was one of our firm's major clients. Jim mentioned a difficult family situation. Mr. Harrison continued, choosing his words carefully. He was concerned. We have a reputation to maintain, Evelyn. Our clients need to see us as stable, trustworthy. They weren't just attacking me. They were attacking my career. They thought shame was a weapon. I saw it as a hostile variable that needed to be neutralized. It's a private financial matter that is being resolved, sir, I said, my voice perfectly level. There is no cause for concern. That night, I decided to conduct a deeper audit. If they were going to make this public, I needed to know the full extent of their financial exposure. For years, I'd had login credentials for their online banking to manage their bills. I assumed they'd never bothered to change them. I was right. I started pulling statements cross-referencing dates and amounts. It didn't take long to find the first anomaly, a large recurring payment to a credit company I didn't recognize. Then, I found another, and another. These weren't my parents' typical expenses. The amounts were too large, the vendors too luxurious. I kept digging, following the money trail until I landed on the county registrar's website. I pulled the property records for my parents' home. My breath caught. There it was, filed 3 months ago, a second mortgage. For $150,000. A debt I knew my parents, with their limited income, could never have qualified for. My hands moved faster across the keyboard, a cold dread mixing with furious focus. I found the loan application in a folder deep within their shared cloud drive. And then I saw it. The signatures at the bottom were forgeries. Clumsy ones, but apparently good enough. The funds hadn't been deposited into my parents' account. They'd been wired directly to a holding company, a company I'd never heard of. A quick search revealed the truth. The company was registered to one person, my sister Chloe Reed. This wasn't just entitlement. This was felony-level fraud. She hadn't been building a business. She'd been funding a lavish lifestyle by systematically looting our parents' only real asset, and she'd forged their names to do it. And as I dug deeper into old email threads, the final sickening piece fell into place. An email from my mother to my father from 4 months prior. I'm worried about all these papers Chloe has us signing, he'd written. My mother's reply. Don't be silly. She's the one with the business sense. It's better if we just trust her and don't ask too many questions. They weren't just victims. They were willing accomplices to their own destruction. Their final call to me wasn't about giving Chloe a leg up. It was a desperate last-ditch effort to get me to unknowingly cover the payments on a fraudulent loan before the entire house of cards collapsed. The next day, they came to my office. The sleek glass doors of the downtown Minneapolis firm slid open, and the three of them, my father, my mother, and Chloe, marched in as if they owned the place. The open-plan office fell silent. Every head turned. They walked directly to my desk. My father spoke first, his voice low and tight with rage. You will stop this nonsense right now, Evelyn. You are humiliating this family. Chloe stood behind him, arms crossed her face, a mask of smug indignation. People are calling me crying, my mother added, her voice trembling for effect. They can't believe what you've done to us. I leaned back in my chair, my expression calm. I let the silence hang in the air, letting my colleagues absorb the scene. Finally, I spoke, my voice quiet, but carrying across the still room. Done to you, that's an interesting way to frame it. Don't play games, my father snapped. You cut us off. You're trying to make us homeless. No, I said, my eyes locking onto Chloe. She did. I swiveled my chair to face my monitor, clicked my mouse twice, and turned the screen to face them. On it was a scanned image of the second mortgage application. Recognize this, Chloe? Your forgery is sloppy, by the way. You looped the "G" in Dad's signature. He never does that. Chloe's face went white. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father stared, his blustering anger deflating into stunned silence. I clicked again, bringing up a color-coded spreadsheet. And this is the money trail. $150,000. Traced from the loan through your shell corporation and into accounts that paid for a trip to Bali, a down payment on a luxury car, and several maxed-out credit cards from high-end department stores. It's a clear case of wire fraud, not to mention bank fraud and forgery. I swiveled the monitor back to me and picked up a single manila folder from my desk. I held it up. This folder contains printouts of all the relevant documents, including the emails where you both, I said, looking at my parents, agreed to willfully ignore Chloe's activities. That's called complicity. The power in the room had not just shifted, it had inverted. Their faces were a ruin of terror. They were no longer the aggrieved family here to shame their wayward daughter. They were criminals standing in the office of the only person who had the evidence to send them to prison. I stood up, my movements slow and deliberate. I suggest you leave, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, yet more powerful than any shout. You are trespassing, and you no longer have any claim on my time or my resources. My support has been officially and permanently terminated. They left. There were no more arguments, no more accusations. My father looked 100 years old. My mother was openly weeping, not for me but for herself. Chloe stared at me, her eyes filled with a new kind of emotion, pure, unadulterated fear. She knew I had her. They walked out of the office in utter silence, the glass doors closing softly behind them. Mr. Harrison was at my desk seconds later. Evelyn, are you all right? What was that? I looked at my boss, the man who had questioned my stability just yesterday. Just closing a bad investment, sir, I said. The account is now reconciled. He stared at me for a moment, then nodded slowly, a look of dawning respect in his eyes. He never brought it up again. I never filed a police report. The threat was sufficient. The bank foreclosed on the house within 2 months. The local paper ran a small story about it, a casualty of the economy. Chloe disappeared. I heard through a cousin she moved to another state, leaving my parents to manage the wreckage. They ended up in a small rental apartment across town, their world shrunk to the size of their consequences. They never called me again. The silence was a relief, like the end of a long, painful fever. A month later, I officially accepted the promotion in New York. As I packed up my Minneapolis apartment, I felt nothing. Not joy, not sadness, not even the grim satisfaction of victory. I just felt balanced. The ledger was clear. For the first time in my adult life, my assets were entirely my own. I wasn't their daughter or their safety net anymore. I was just Evelyn. And I was finally free. This journey taught me a brutal but necessary lesson. Family is not an unconditional contract. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially when they are the ones holding the matches. Setting boundaries isn't an act of cruelty. It's an act of accounting for your own worth. If you've ever had to close a ledger on a relationship that was bankrupting you emotionally or financially, I hope you know you are not alone. Please share your thoughts below. What would you have done in my position? And if you found value in this story, consider subscribing to this channel for more. Your support means everything.